Life for me, guys, is full of all sorts of crazy shit. Well, I'll start from the very beginning. You don't mind if I start with a dumb phrase like everything started from the very beginning? Yeah? Thanks. So, everything started from the very beginning. When I was born, well, sorry, let me ask you a humble question. When did you start feeling like a self, like I am me? For me, I only realized I am me when I was 3, walking through the hospital counting lamps. One day, I was about 5 years old, coming home, and through the kitchen window, I saw a jester. You know, like from the Middle Ages with a hat full of bells and a mask. He was kind of 2 meters tall and waving at me. Naturally, I shit myself. I was walking home with my mom, and, well, she saw nothing. I freaked out hard, but it was okay. That weird thing disappeared. Then, maybe a month or a year later, something like that, in the pantry, it's covered by a curtain. There appeared a cat's face. Red eyes, of course. It moved back and forth on the curtain and then vanished. I threw slippers at it for an hour or so afterwards, but no luck. Someone or something lives in that pantry. I was scared of it until I was about 8. Then there was a thing at Anomalous Zone, kind of like SCP stuff. So much weird shit happened in the yard next to the house. First case, an old lady was walking by, face covered, looked anonymous or something. I was with a friend on the playground alone. There was an old man sitting on a bench far away, and otherwise, it was very quiet. I think it was around 2009. Suddenly, everything turned red, like seen through a filter, and on the ground and fences, weird blue flows were moving. I don't even know how to describe them. I didn't see myself, but instead of the old lady stood a 2-meter demon, or something like that. No tail, but it was burned and red as hell. Long claws and horns. The craziest thing was that I could see the whole yard in 360 degrees from every point, and a little beyond, but not outside the yard. I wasn't the only one seeing this. I don't know what happened to my friend, but after that, we rarely saw each other. No one really to tell, so I write it here. Friends think I'm nuts, by the way. Then there was a moment where I saw the future for like 5 seconds, but again, from a different angle. You know, like you're in one spot and you see a couple people turning the corner. So I returned to my body and saw, yeah, they're coming out. I freaked out again. I remember lying in bed once, alone in the room, decided to get some sleep. Sitting on my phone, and I saw myself from the mirror, almost from the ceiling, you could say. I saw myself clicking on the phone. This room had a lot of weird stuff, but nothing that strong. I remember once I dreamed I chased away some kind of monkey jumping on the window bars. Then came something much stronger. By the way, you can't get inside the house because there are 2 Domovoi house spirits. Or one, but a good one I saw with his family. The other one I didn't see, or almost didn't. I hit it with a stick when he tried to come at me, again, in a dream. Another time in school, I was sitting at my desk in class, 6th grade, and the teacher started talking like a robot. I looked around and bam, everyone around was a robot. And I was a robot too. Back to the room situation. In winter, someone was always sneaking around outside the window, crunching snow. When I lit a candle, nothing happened. It burned out. I lit another candle, all church candles, by the way. I don't believe in religion, but I don't deny the existence of a creator as an almighty being made of some other kind of energy and matter. That one burned out too. Then I lit a third one. Outside, loud growls appeared. The candle went out. I lit the candle again, and something started trying to blow it out. Like someone was deliberately puffing at it, but there was no draft. So I went to sleep in my sister's room. There were a lot of stories, of course, and this is just a small part. Next time, I can tell more. But damn, guys, this is crazy. The second story. It was told to me by my uncle. The story also happened in the 90s. Back then, my uncle worked as a long-haul trucker. One fine day, he got lucky hauling Japanese electronics from some nowhere place. I don't remember exactly where, unfortunately, to the capital. The cargo consisted of VCRs, video players, and TVs. Most of it belonged to some gangsters. At the starting point, they warned him that there should be no problems on the way because everything was under control. But he had to drive through the middle of nowhere. Later, at one of the transfer points, a car with some gangsters would meet him and escort him to Moscow. The first part of the route went without incidents. Then the story happened. He was driving through the forest. Almost no cars coming or going. It was getting dark. He switched on the high beams to notice some people far away walking along the road. There were about 4 of them, walking slowly along both sides of the road, on the shoulders. They were heading in the same direction as his truck. When he got closer, he slowed down. But then they stirred and started jumping towards his truck. Seriously. He even managed to jump and grab the side of the truck's tarp. Somehow, he held onto it. My uncle pressed the gas, but no chance to shake them off. 3 ran after the truck without falling behind, and the 4th climbed the tarp toward the cabin. Then my uncle looked in the rearview mirror, and more people were running out of the forest, heading toward the truck pretty fast. He was driving at about 75 kilometers per hour then. He freaked out hard. but he freaked out even more when he got a good look at the one hanging on the tarp. He looked like a normal guy in clothes that were fashionable at the time. Jacket, sweater, jeans, and sneakers. But his head was a bit bigger than normal. His eyes and nose were also large. The eyes were dark, but he couldn't see pupils. His nose was too flat and turned up at the tip, so you could see the nostrils clearly. His mouth was big, about as wide as a frog's, almost up to his ears, with thin lips. No fangs that he noticed. He didn't really see the hands well enough to tell if he had claws or not. Further down the road was a sharp turn that my uncle barely managed to take at speed, but the one hanging onto the tarp fell to the ground as the truck tilted. After the turn, there was a straight stretch where my uncle could speed up to 90 kilometers per hour, and the pursuer started falling behind. Next was the place where the gangsters were supposed to meet him. He got to the parking lot for trucks and met with the gangsters, telling them what happened. How his truck was attacked and it was unclear if those were even humans. They laughed it off, saying he just got scared and imagined everything. Yeah, you guys with knives cut the tarp, but he was just frightened and it was dark in the forest, so maybe he just imagined it. They told him they couldn't just leave it like that. It was probably some local village gang, and they had to teach them a lesson for such a bold attack. They told him to sleep until morning and that they themselves would go handle the attackers. He couldn't fall asleep for a long time, too scared. He had a bottle of vodka with him. Only after he drank about half of it almost in one go did he finally fall asleep. In the morning, he woke up, got out of the truck, and nobody was around. The gangsters never showed up. Nearby stood an empty Dvach truck with no driver. That was it. He waited for the gangsters about 4 hours, but never saw them. The Dvach driver also didn't show up. He drove to the nearest village with a post office, called his employers, exchanged him, but didn't describe the attackers anymore. He said the gangsters went to deal with the attackers and also disappeared. In the end, they sent other gangsters to escort him. He never found out what happened to the first ones. Then, around 2005, he happened to meet the gangster who hired him to move the cargo. By then, the guy had become a well-known businessman. In conversations, my uncle asked him about the story with his people. Where did they go? He told the following. They organized a search. First, they found the truck. It wasn't on the road. It seemed like it had initially slid off into a ditch and stopped, but then it was dragged sideways toward the forest. The left rear door was torn off and lying nearby. The left front door was open. The right doors were both closed. Almost all the windows on the truck were broken. Near the truck, they found several shell casings. The grass near the truck and further into the forest was badly trampled, like many people had passed through. Further in was a small clearing where they found a Makarov pistol and more shell casings. A little farther from the clearing, they found the torn-off arm of one of the gangsters. The arm was torn off at the elbow, ripped out of the joint. They found nothing else. No body parts or whole bodies. They turned the surrounding villages upside down for a month, thinking maybe a local gang was robbing people. But apparently not. There wasn't much youth in the villages, mostly middle-aged drunks. The old people feared that forest a lot. They told many tales about it, how people disappeared there even back in the Tsar's time. Plus, during the road construction, several road workers went missing. So, yeah, that's the story. This happened when I was in my second year of university. I studied in our regional center, although the outskirts there were just as crappy as my hometown. Then I started feeling depressed. School was a mess. The girl I liked was sleeping with someone else, problems with my parents at home. In short, a lot piled up. I sort of stopped hanging out with my classmates, stopped going out with them like before, stopped partying. I just walked around the city alone. By the way, I saved money pretty well that way, had more left over. So it was early May outside. I grabbed a small box of wine and went for a walk. Without even noticing, I wandered to the edge of the city, first into an industrial zone with factories and warehouses, then beyond that. My legs started feeling a bit heavy, so I thought I should take a break, drink some wine, and head back. I liked the small hill for resting. I climbed it and found a rock warmed by the early May sun, just perfect. But below the hill, there was an unpleasant sight. There were ruins of some kind of structure overgrown with bushes and small trees. A bit further was a stream and a large concrete pipe, which was probably the source of the water. Water was flowing from the pipe with a small pressure. So I was sitting there drinking wine and saw two small figures appear from the bushes among the ruins. They looked like kids, about 5 years old. But what were kids doing there? I guess adults were sitting in the bushes where they came from, probably drinking quietly, so I didn't hear them. These kids were probably children of those drunks. But when those kids started talking, I was a little surprised. They spoke with hoarse male adult voices. Sure, they could imitate adult speech, but they kept talking like that for almost the entire conversations. About 10 minutes, and they gestured strangely during the talk just like adults. Well, whatever, I thought. Drunk parents, living like that, you pick up some strange habits from them. I finished the wine and headed home. When I got home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something strange was going on under that hill. I don't know how to explain it, just a weird feeling. I decided to go back there the next day. If nobody was there, I would check out those ruins. That's what I did. I arrived, climbed the hill again to get a view and check the approaches to the ruins. Then I saw those two kids come out of the bushes again, but this time they were carrying a big sack between them. You could tell it was heavy. Then one of them got hot and rolled up the sleeves of his sweater, and his little hands turned out to be not childlike at all, but fully adult and somewhat muscular. Damn, dwarfs maybe? What a circus. That's what I thought. I got curious, but not wanting to attract attention, I went down the hill a little and hid behind a small bush. These dwarfs dragged the sack toward the pipe. They were talking to each other, but I couldn't hear what. Their voices sounded like those of some celebrity, like Jugurta. When they got to the pipe, one dwarf threw down the sack and climbed inside the pipe. The other started handing the end of the sack to him. It didn't seem difficult for them, so they must have been pretty strong. The first one pulled the sack into the pipe, the second climbed in after him. Then they disappeared inside the pipe. What a twist. Some dwarfs dragging sacks into a pipe. To say I was shocked is an understatement, but I was afraid to go down and check where exactly they dragged the sack. The next day, I gathered courage and went back again. This time in the morning, around 9 o'clock. I waited nearby for about 40 minutes for those dwarfs to show up, but they didn't. Then I started inspecting the ruins. The ruins were just ruins. Probably some room once belonging to a factory. Maybe a small boiler room or something else. But then I found something strange. There was a pretty clean concrete slab. Around it were 7 small stones arranged in a circle. In the middle of the circle was a fire pit. Nearby the circle were many animal bones. Different kinds. Dog, cat, bird, even a few frog bones and what I think were cow or horse bones. They were all white, like they had been boiled. Then I saw small tracks leading from the fire pit toward the pipe. About size 32. The grass hadn't grown there yet and the ground was wet, probably because of the nearby stream, so the tracks were clear. It also looked like something was often dragged on the ground toward the pipe, but I never figured out what that something was or where it came from. I searched the whole area but couldn't understand where they pulled things from or into the pipe. The pipe itself was not straight. I looked inside. Probably there is a turn about 5 meters in, but who knows? I might be wrong. I didn't have a flashlight. There were drag marks inside the pipe too. The mud was disturbed and there was green slime from algae. Those dwarfs could probably move there a bit bent over, but I would have to crawl on all fours. I wanted to investigate more carefully and come back with friends, but then the time came when I had to go to classes anyway or risk expulsion. Then exams, then I went home for the summer. The next school year I came back there with friends, but the pipe had collapsed and fallen into the stream. It was impossible to get inside. The bank of the stream had also slid a bit. The stone circle was destroyed too. Only the fire pit remained. There were bones, but not as many as the previous year. That's the strange story. At first, I wanted to post it in a thread about strange people. I'll add a few mini stories from people I know. 1. An old lady told this from work. She and her husband were driving back from a vacation somewhere in Ukraine. This happened after crossing the border, somewhere in Russia, but that doesn't really matter. The car broke down. According to her, it stalled every 5 kilometers, but she couldn't explain why. The road was totally empty, not a single car coming or going. It was about 9 in the evening, so although it was summer and still fairly light, night was coming. They were driving and saw a village not far from the road. Just a normal, unremarkable village. Some windows already had lights on and you could see people still walking outside. They stopped and the husband went to ask for help or find a place to stay overnight and fix the car. He was gone for about 40 minutes. Then he came back and said the village was completely abandoned. But from the road you could clearly see the village, even distinguish people. She said to him, "Are you crazy? There are houses, the lights are on, and I see some old woman carrying a sack." He said he saw that too, but the village was abandoned. She decided to go with him thinking he was messing with her. When they got about 10 or 12 meters from the village, it suddenly changed. All the houses looked abandoned. Bushes and grass were growing on the streets. No people, no animals. You could see the houses were neglected and slowly falling apart. Judging by how it looked, nobody had lived there for 5 to 7 years. Both of them felt a strong sense of unease. They quickly got back to the car. From the car, the village looked alive again. But it wasn't a mirage. The husband touched the houses. It was real. About 20 kilometers later, they found a normal village and a local guy helped them. He said there had never been a village in that place, at least not in the 40 years he lived there. But once they found an empty Moskich car standing on the side of the road with no driver or passengers. People often get lost in that area. 2. A friend was traveling by train. At night, he wanted to smoke. He went out to the vestibule, was standing there smoking, looking out the window. The train was crawling at about 45 kilometers per hour, surrounded by forest. He saw a huge dog in the woods. The staying on its hind legs, front paws resting on a tree. When you look closer, its body looked more human than dog, but its paws and face looked like a wolf. It was about 2 meters tall compared to the tree. He said it was both beautiful and terrifying. Its body was graceful, and it gave off a primal predator power. It seemed to sense it was being watched and turned around. My friend said it looked right at him. Its eyes were huge and yellow, and this dog, whatever it was, wasn't afraid of the train or the railway. It didn't seem to scare it at all. Of course, the guy freaked out. Now he even hesitates to go into the forest. Who knows what's out there?